The interesting thing to me is, again, I find it interesting, maybe in very prosaic ways, the fact that all this is coming along. We're approaching this new month, and it's the same month, of course, that the flood, or as it's called, the Mabul happens. 1,656 years after the birth of Adam. And it's remarkable to me that, actually not remarkable, but as a kind of an entree or to set the stage, I find that people often default to the position that before the flood, because Noah made the teva, the ark, out of a kind of wood, that represented the technology of his day. And I don't agree with that at all. I believe that God told him to make it of a specific kind of wood because and to put pitch all over it was because and the dimensions of it made it incredibly stable. Is that the only reason he did is because wood is so forgiving in a tempest, a raging sea. Everybody knows the song "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald," right?
I do.
By Gordon. You know, we both. Well, it was a hit song over here, and this was a real event of this huge, gigantic freighter that broke up on Lake. Was it Lake Michigan?
I don't remember.
But it encountered a storm, and you'd think that something made of metal would withstand a storm. Well, it broke up like any great ship will caught in a storm. So I think that if you go back here's the point: if you go back 1,000 years from today, look how far we have come technologically with the brain capacity, the mental capacity that we have, which is much more diminished than that of the flood generation. So just think of from Adam to roughly 1,600 years later. That's much more, over 1,000 years later. Obviously, who knows where humanity, what level of technology they had achieved in their day.
Chazal talk about this. This is a deep secret in the Torah. It's a total misconception for people to look upon those generations as, these gaping, like prehistoric men, because the secret of the Torah is that the further that we get away from the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, but even those earlier generations, they were very high, they were very close to Hashem. And the principle is that we become more and more diminished intellectually. In fact, the idea of all of the technology that we have today that we didn't have, there's been more of an advancement, let's say, in the last 100 years than there was in the last 1,000 years, and it grows exponentially. And the idea is that it's not that we're greater, it's that we're smaller, and that we need these things in order to be able to serve Hashem, because those generations were huge minds and huge souls. Yeah. And, like there's this idea that the generation of Rabbi Akiva, the generation of those sages in that era, let's say first century, the sages of the Talmud, each one of them had the capacity to resuscitate the dead. Yeah. And they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have an app to do it. They didn't have anything. They were so connected.